guys, it's Danny. Today I'm taking you along as we are making yet another terrarium, but this time we're gonna make a mini terrarium, or should I say micro terrarium. We're actually gonna place some orchids in a jar, in this jar you see right here, and it's going to look beautiful. Do you remember the video with the jewel orchids? Well, in that video I showed you how I made a really tiny terrarium from a, let's say, decorative greenhouse from Amazon. Well, not everybody has the possibility to purchase that decorative greenhouse, but I think a jar most of us can find lying around. So if you didn't know you could actually make a small terrarium for orchids from a jar, well, today I'm gonna show you how. So before we start, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it. Leave me a comment telling me if you will actually try out a mini terrarium. And hey, why not subscribe? I post multiple times a week. Right, with that said, let's talk a little bit about keeping orchids in tight or actually sealed containers. Is it even safe? Well, yes and no. It really depends on environment. If I would attempt this in my old environment, probably things wouldn't necessarily end up all that great. Because I was growing my orchids in a balcony, not a home. The balcony was pretty humid during winter time and I had very low temperatures. So things were actually very prone to molds, to excessive humidity in the ambiental air, and things just don't work the way they work in my new environment, which is much close to a living room. Kinda. It is very warm pretty much most of the time. And that actually helps a lot with fungal spores, with water evaporation, and with many other stuff that I don't think I have the capacity to talk about, because I'm obviously not aware of all the chemical processes that actually happen here and don't happen in my previous environment. So in the end, what can we do? Trial and error. It's not a sad truth, but it is the reality of things. I do a lot of trial and error with my orchids. I know that it's a very scary thing, and I'm not saying I'm super comfortable with it, but I reached to the conclusion after so many years that some stuff need to be tested out, because this environment is just so different than what I have been adjusted to. So now I'm trying out stuff, and the first step was growing orchids in these cloches, which I really like, and seeing which one is okay in this environment, which one actually thrives. And this particular orchid, it's one that absolutely thrives in this type of environment. We have nice root growth. Look at this, we have beautiful green foliage, and this one I didn't even ventilate way too often because I just forgot about it. And this is the Jacquiniella equitantifolia, which I purchased a few months ago. You might remember it, and I told you that I want to keep it for a tiny terrarium. And I do believe today is that day. Another two orchids that I'm going to use in the jar are in here. Now, I'm not gonna pull out the orchids that I already had in this mini terrarium because they are doing nice and they didn't outgrow it just yet, but there are two orchids which are recovering in here. Let me show you. Ta-da! This is one of them and this is the other. Now these guys, they don't look all that great, do they? Well, these are Lepanthus orchids. If you remember, I purchased them again quite a few months ago, I think together with the Jacquiniella, and I tried growing them in the biorb, which I have a video on if you missed it, links down below. And well, the biorb is way too ventilated for them, absolutely dried out. Look at them, they lost all of their roots. I did my best to keep them hydrated, but obviously I could not sit on top of hydrating them. And right now, I'm trying to revive them as much as possible in this closed enclosure, and I did manage to delay a little bit dehydration, but these guys need a little cleaning up. They need proper potting. I do intend to pot them up actually, or stake them in such a way that they're close to the medium, but honestly these guys are a question mark. I'm not entirely sure if they're gonna make it. So if you will, this will be a terrarium / ICU for these orchids. But here's the thing, all of these orchids that I showed you are very high moisture orchids. If you were to try and grow them in dry conditions, maybe typical home conditions, you might actually struggle with them. They're nothing like Phalaenopsis or Cattleyas or Dendrobiums or anything that you can find at the supermarket. Supermarket? No, flower shop. Why did I say supermarket? So a very high moisture enclosure is actually quite a lot more suited for them than it would be for a Phalaenopsis or any other orchid. So no, I don't have the courage to put a Phalaenopsis in here. To be fully honest, I don't see a reason to anyway. But yeah, I'm pretty confident with placing something like this, which absolutely struggles in moderate humidity, let alone dry environments. While in something like this, which I will give you some close-ups, my other Lepanthus is actually doing beautiful. I already see a little flower spike, so I'm gonna have flowers soon. And judging by the amount of condensation on the glass, it's easy to tell this is not the biorb, this is not a ventilated environment. Does it work? Absolutely. Did you look at this thing? Do I have mold outbreaks? Absolutely not. Did I actually add some biological means to prevent mold? Yeah, I did. But in the end, it's because the environment is stable and I allowed it the time to stabilize. So I'll be sure to put down below the link to how I made this enclosure as well, so you'll see how I went about it. The thing is, I really don't know if something like this will work for 100% all of you guys. But I do know for a fact that for some of you, it will actually work. If you're interested in trying it, you should definitely test it out. But maybe not spend 40 bucks on something like this. Maybe try it out on a little jar that you might already have in your home, right? So with this introduction out of the way, let's get to work, shall we? Alright, so first off, we need to place the medium or the substrate. And just like with the other enclosure, I will be using a combination of cocoa peat and bark chips. It's the exact same mix that I did last time. And as a side note, I personally never use drainage layers or fake bottoms or whatever you want to call them. I find they're absolutely not necessary. I did not experience any bad effects not using them. And especially in small enclosures, they just take up a lot of space. I'm not a fan, not gonna use them, so we'll see how that goes. I also do not use activated carbon in my mixes because, yet again, I absolutely failed to see the benefits in the past. I'm having good results without. Personal choice, anybody can do whatever they feel like. I feel like not doing all of these things. This substrate is extra dry. I think I'm gonna have to wet it a little bit before I plant these orchids. Okay, so because I do have quite a tall plant here, well, it's not extremely tall, but for this terrarium, I do want to have a raised back. Do you see that on this side, the substrate is slightly slanted? Well, that's on purpose because I want to have room for the roots of this orchid. In the front here, not so much. The other orchids don't necessarily need to be so rooted into the medium, at least not now. We'll see about it later. And I think I need just a little bit more substrate. Right, and now I really need to wet this because it's gonna be a bit hard to work with. First off, the Jackiniella. I will unpot her. I actually repotted when I received it in a medium which had a little bit more sphagnum moss, as you can see, but I will not transfer the sphagnum moss back. If I have bits of bark attached to the roots, I'm not gonna bother removing them, but the moss I kind of do want to remove. So you can see how good this orchid did in a very high moisture environment. If you remember when I did the unboxing or when I showed you this orchid, I was saying that it comes from very humid environments. So I assumed, or I guessed, that it will actually do good being pretty much moist at all times and in high humidity environments. And I was right this time. I'm not always right. And look at those little roots. They weren't here when I purchased this orchid. It grew very, very well. All right, so I am going to make a little space here and I'm gonna plunk the little orchid in this little hole. I'm really not bothered if some of the roots are up in the air. This is an epiphytic orchid, but it is such a high moisture lover that this medium will be absolutely fine for it. It is not a suffocating medium. I didn't use soils or anything of the sorts. It is still very, very fluffy, especially due to that bark. So the roots will be absolutely fine, but I do want it to sit potted, as it were. So now let's take care of these little guys, which, yeah, I will need to check all of these roots and cut away everything that is dead, which is a lot, I think. I need to wet them first. Okay, surprisingly enough, I do think some of these roots are actually alive. So if you remember, the roots were a very bright pink, beautiful coloration, or purple. Now they're dark colored, but they are not dry. They don't feel papery. I cannot like remove sections of them. I think they might still be alive, just in very, very poor condition. So I can definitely see some that are just not alive anymore. I'm gonna cut away those. But I'm gonna leave all of these roots, which are dark colored, and hopefully there are enough to hydrate the orchids. Now, these orchids I would like to have not really mounted, but having an opportunity to climb on something. They look very well climbing. Sorry about the bird noises, but I guess it's their lunchtime. So one of them I actually had in the biorb. Didn't really make any difference because the biorb was just too dry, but I will try to place them, let's say, in the medium, slightly in front of the Jaciniella at a sort of angle. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing here. I don't really see, so I'm gonna have to look at it as well. So I'm going to place one of my orchids right here at the base of one of the pieces, and I will bury just a little bit some of the roots just to maintain them quite wet. Not that the environment won't be wet, but I do want to try and jumpstart them as much as possible, and I'm hoping it's going to work. And once again, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Let me check. Oh, it actually looks pretty. I feel the need of another orchid right here. I really don't have anything tiny. Oh, actually, I'm going to use some of this climbing moss that I have in the other mini terrarium, and it kind of looks like a plant, so I'm gonna place it right here in the middle. I should have gotten my aquarium tweezers. I do realize there are a lot of reflections, so I will be sure to give you some close-ups at the end. By the way, I'm filming for the past half an hour right now already, even though it doesn't look that way, and Joey's still eating. Is this the first time you're reading for the day? It might be actually, because they're incubating. But we're not done with the moss. I still have that flower shop moss. Well, the one that I found in the flower shop, I am cultivating it, and look how beautiful it is. Do you even see? It looks like the softest green pillows of life. I love it, but this guy does not live in anything under 100% humidity. In the biorb, I can reach 98% humidity, and this guy is just yellowing and wilting off. He does not enjoy it. What he wants is 100%. Go big or go home. So I'm going to split it in tiny little pieces and try to remove as much as possible the dried bits, and just, okay, this is not cutting it. Right, so I'm just going to place it on top of the medium, not bury it in any way, just place it on top and create a beautiful fluffy moss floor. So the little terrarium is done. So all I need to do is to properly water it. I'm using this wash bottle, I think it's called. You can definitely use something else, a small watering can, maybe whatever you feel like. Just make sure you don't put way too much water. Not because you wouldn't be able to remove it. You can actually tilt the whole jar. You might move around stuff, but if you hold your hand, you can get the water out. Don't worry about that, but it is such a drag, isn't it? No one has time for that. All right, so I still have some dry spots, but it's okay. The water will be dispersed evenly, and if it's not, I can add more water. So that's about it. I'm gonna give you some close-ups because I'm not sure how much you were able to see due to the reflections, and I'm gonna give you a few more thoughts. If you want to attempt this, I would definitely go for orchids which are supposed to come from very humid areas. One orchid that is easy to grow in homes, likes warm temperatures, and absolutely enjoys high humidity is the jewel orchid, whatever jewel orchid you have. So if you want to experiment, I would definitely go for something like that. If you want to experiment with miniature phalaenopsis and stuff, definitely you can do that too, but those guys are not all that hardy when it comes to super high humidity, low ventilation. So I think that's a little bit risky, but obviously mini phals are kind of affordable. You can find them everywhere, so I see why you would be tempted to try out with that. And also trial and error. There's never any guarantee with live things. There's never any guarantee that whatever you see on the internet or in articles will work for you, because the person who talks about these things does not live where you live in the same location, does not have the products you have or the water you have, and so on and so forth. So take that with a grain of salt. Keep an eye on your project and see how it behaves. If it goes south, pull the plug. It's absolutely fine. But if you don't try, you don't know. So I hope this was inspiring. And if you do try it out, let me know in the comments below how it went for you. Did it go south? Or is it still going strong? And what orchids you actually tried this with? Alrighty, quick little update. This is the second day, and yes, the terrarium will fog up, particularly in the first days, but it's gonna get better with time actually. So I really wanted to show you something. Look at the Lepanthus. I mean, they're already much more hydrated than they used to be. They don't look super good, but I can definitely tell a difference. And even though I did actually have them in the mini greenhouse, I didn't put them in soil. I just had them on top of the moss. I was hoping that the roots, if there were any live roots, would absorb. But yeah, this is the difference. When you just bury the roots a little bit and they're constantly in contact with water and air at the same time, I would never recommend you put the orchid roots in full water and expect them to get hydrated, because there's such a thing as waterlogging, and some orchids are more prone to that than others. But if you provide moisture at the same time with air, the orchids will get hydrated. If the roots work, the orchids will get hydrated. And look at that. Only 1 day. That's amazing. I think they're gonna do well. I'm so happy. So I just had to show this to you. And again, very sorry for the constant noises in the background, but I guess it's lunchtime for Joey. There's nothing I can do about it. Joey's also the type that does not enjoy my company, so I cannot just hold her on my hand and she's gonna be interested in whatever I'm doing. No, she wants nothing to do with me. My eye's incubating right now. So yeah, sorry about the noises. Hope it wasn't very annoying. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I know many of you voted for this subject in the community section, so I hope you enjoy. I'll definitely keep you up to date. And with that said, hope you have a great weekend. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!